Good evening, all. As you'll know from watching these videos, I'm not a huge fan of romantic comedies or rom-coms as they're known these days. I find them too formulaic and predictable. It's basically just the same old plot. Boy meets girl, boy loses boy gets girl, or these days it can be boy meets boy or girl meets girl or, boy meets trans, whatever. But it's pretty much the same formula. However, there is one exception to that rule. There's one rom-com that I really love, and I've loved it from the moment that I saw it. And that is Serendipity from 2001, which stars John Cusack, Beckinsale, Jeremy Piven, and Molly Shannon, and it's really quite and Eugene Levy in a very funny role. It's a very good movie. It's a Christmas movie, which I don't usually like Christmas movies either. 'Cause I'm not religious, but again, it's still a very good movie. It's a good New York movie, and I lived in New York for a while, for a couple of years, and in New Jersey before that, so I visited New York often. So I'm familiar with all the locations, including the restaurant called Serendipity, which I've never actually been to, or I've never eaten there. I've actually walked past it, which is where part of the plot takes place. It's about two people, Jonathan Traeger and Sarah Wilson, who meet at Bloomingdale's, and they're both going after the same pair of black cashmere gloves. He wants it for his girlfriend, she wants it for her boyfriend. They kind of bicker over it, and there's a third guy who tries to like buy them out from under them. And they come up with a kind of fakakta story that keeps them from doing that. And then Jonathan says, "No, I insist you take them." So Sarah buys the gloves, and she hasn't told him her name at this point, but he told her that his name is Jonathan. And then they go to sort of celebrate their the little creative thing they did to get the gloves. They go to the restaurant Serendipity, and they have a brief, just I think just a dessert. Serendipity is known for its famous desserts and hamburgers as well. They make really good hamburgers that are like this thick, and um, something called frozen hot chocolate. Now, how you can have frozen hot chocolate, I don't know, but that's one of their famous desserts, and I think that's what they had in the movie. They're shown drinking these fancy chocolate drinks, so I think that was that dish, frozen hot chocolate. Um, and they're just kind of talking a little bit, and uh, he says that he kind of confesses that he's very attracted to her. He calls her beautiful, and says that he likes her, and she's telling him that she believes in like little signs that fate. She believes in fate, and that fate gives people little signs when they're meant to be together. Uh, but then they have to part. They both, like I said, he has a girlfriend, she has a boyfriend, and they leave the restaurant. And he's a little bit frustrated. And then he realizes that he left his scarf in the restaurant, and he has to go back. She realizes she left the gloves in the restaurant, and she has to go back. So they meet again, and she's starting to think that that's a little sign that maybe they're supposed to be together. And he's kind of encouraging this because, like I said, he's obviously quite attracted to her, which, given that it's Kate Beckinsale, is quite understandable. And then they do a couple of things. They listen to a Salvation Army band, and he asks her for her phone number, and she says, okay, and writes it on a piece of paper, and then the wind carries it away when a garbage truck comes by. And she thinks that that's a sign that they're not meant to be together. She says, oh, come on, you got to give me one more chance. She says, okay, you write your name and phone number on this $5 bill. And he does that. And she goes and buys breath mints and gets changed. She says, if I get that $5 bill back, that means we were meant to be together. He says, wait a minute, don't I get something? She says, she's been carrying around a copy of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's novel, Love in the Time of Cholera. And she says, I'm going to write my name and my phone number in this book, and tomorrow morning I'm going to sell it to a used bookstore. And if you get the book back, then that means we're supposed to be together. He says, okay. Then he's trying to kind of, cling to her for a little bit. And they do one more thing, and says they go into the Waldorf Astoria, a very famous New York hotel. It's just gorgeous. If you've never been into it and you go to New York, do yourself a favor, go. And she says, I'm going to randomly go into an elevator and randomly pick a floor, and you go into the elevator on the other side and you randomly pick a floor. She gives him one of the gloves, the one that's in the bag, and she takes the other one, and says, if we go on this, end up at the same floor, then we're meant to be together. He says, okay. He goes in and he does this. She goes right to the floor, this is the 23rd floor. They both pick the 23rd floor. But Jonathan's elevator stops at the 14th floor, and a little kid gets on. He's dressed like the devil, and he's acting goofy. He starts pressing all the buttons. He says, no, no, don't do that. His father says, oh, come on. He's just a little kid. Let him do what he wants. So now the elevator gets stuck between the 15th and 16th floor, and then finally it moves again. But since the kid has pressed every button, they have to stop at every floor. Meanwhile, Kate Beckinsale has gotten to the 23rd floor, and she's just sitting on the floor holding the glove and waiting. And she leaves finally after a few, about 10, 15 minutes. Finally, Jonathan comes out on the 23rd floor, and she's gone now. He goes back to the lobby and desperately tries to find her, but she has already taken off, and he figures, well, that's that. It forwards to a couple of years in the future, and Jonathan is at some sort of a fancy dinner, and his friend Jeremy Piven is, whose name is Dean in this, and he tells him he's giving a speech, and it's a best man speech. He says, I never believed in such a thing as soulmates, but if there is one, Jonathan has certainly found his, and we think it's going to be Sarah, but it turns out it's not. It's another one named Hallie, who's played by Bridget Moynahan, and he's going to get married to her in, I think it's just like a week or 2 weeks, and then we also see a scene of Sarah, who is now in San Francisco. Well, it's supposed to be San Francisco. That they did a little cinematic trick, which I thought was interesting, that they show you the Transamerica Pyramid, but then they show you a scene that's actually downtown Toronto. And the ferry that she's supposedly taking from, she's a psychoanalyst, and she's talking to a client, interestingly tells him that she does not believe in fate anymore, that she once did, but now she doesn't anymore, and she thinks that's all nonsense. And then we see her, and she goes home to Sausalito, and he has a nice house, and is dating this guy Lars, who is played by John Corbett, who is a very underrated actor. I always thought he's actually very funny. He's good in comic roles, and he's also good in serious roles. He was in a series that was a science fiction series. I think it was just called The Stranger. He was really good in that. But anyway, he plays this character called Lars, who's a musician. He plays a kind of a strange flute that's sort of like Zamfir, but he's a more hip kind of character, and plays jazz stuff mostly. And he's going to be going on a big tour in Europe. And as it evolves, it turns out that Lars doesn't seem to have a lot of time to spend with Sarah. He's constantly consumed by producing the records and going on the tour, and he has to approve T-shirt designs and things like that, and make these videos. And he's going to go on tour, and he wants her to come with him. And the tour is going to be extended. It was supposed to be 2 weeks. Now it's going to be like 3 weeks. And she said, well, I've got my patients, and I don't know if I can really afford to leave them. And he says, oh, come on, they're only going to miss you for like 1 extra week. She says, oh, okay, and agrees to do that. Meanwhile, in New York, Jonathan is preparing for the wedding, and he and Hallie are packing and for the honeymoon, and he accidentally comes across the glove, I should say, the one glove that's still in the bag, and realizes that also in the bag is the receipt. And although since it's been a few years, the name is smudged out, but the credit card number is still visible. And just on a whim, he goes to Bloomingdale's, again, where they've picked up the glove. And he talks to Eugene Levy, plays a clerk. He's really, really funny. He won't let him come across the counter. He says, oh, you're not allowed behind the counter. Stay on that side of the counter. He just keeps saying that. And he says, can you trace this credit card? And he says, oh, I don't know about that. That's not really very ethical. And he said, well, come on, this girl may be my destiny. Can't you help me? He says, well, I'm a little bit short of my cash draw this week. And he says, really? Well, here. And he says, no, you can't come behind. He says, look, I'm just reaching my arm. He picks up a tie, and he puts it on the counter and says, I'll buy this tie. Will you help me? And he says, sir, the tie is $95. I said my cash draw was low this week. He said, well, what else can I do? He sells him this outrageous, like, horrible purple suit. And he makes him buy it at $700. And after that, he says, okay, now now your cash drawer is fine. Now can you look up the receipt? He said, I already did it. There's no name on it. He's like going to strangle it. He said, no, you stay over there. And he says, I know a way. He says, you can go to the warehouse. When somebody applied for a Bloomingdale's card, they had to fill out a form, and her name and her address will be on the form. But you need an employee to take you there. He says, an employee to take you there. And she says, okay, fine. He buys this really ugly pair of shoes, though. It's another $300. And again, I'm not going to give away the whole plot to the thing, but he and Jeremy Piven go on this like wild goose chase. Every place they try to find Sarah, they get stymied by something else that gets in the way. Like they don't find her, they find her former roommate who barely remembers her. And he says, "Well, I painted a picture of her, and the picture is an abstract, so it doesn't really do them any good." And then he tells them that she was just his roommate, not his lover, and that she came from a roommate agency. They go to the agency. Well, the agency is now a bridal shop. It's not the same thing. And they're going to go one more step. And Jonathan says, no, that's it. I've had enough. And Jeremy says, well, you're not going to pursue it anymore? He says, no, this is ridiculous. I'm getting married in 3 days. Forget it. And he takes this as a sign, that, they weren't meant to be together, and he's just being stupid. So he gives up the thing. Meanwhile, in Europe, Lars's tour is not going well. He keeps having dates are canceled, and he's watching this video that has like these Vikings on it. He says, that guy looks unhappy. Do you want people to think that it's my music that's making him unhappy? And he says, no. He says, well, you're going to have to reshoot the whole thing. So now, he's being too focused on his career, and he's not focusing on Sarah. And she's feeling a bit neglected and says, I'm going to go to New York for a few days. And, he says, well, I'll come and join in. I'm sorry. And she says, no, don't worry. You don't have anything to be sorry about. I just want some time to myself. I'm going to meet up with my old friend, Eve, and we're going to, kind of just go to New York. And so they do that. Eve is the character played by Molly Shannon. And they also go through a couple of things. They don't know where to go at first. And she kind of lies to Eve about why she wants to go to New York, and she doesn't say anything about trying to find Jonathan. And finally, Eve's going to leave and go back to Los Angeles or whatever, and San Francisco rather. And she says, "No, I want you to stay with me, and we'll go to the Waldorf. We'll go to the Waldorf." And they go to the Waldorf, and Eve meets up with Hallie, who she knows from school, by the elevators, but Jonathan's not with her at the moment, and Sarah was not with her at that time. She went up to the room, and Hallie brings her into the reception where they're holding the practice wedding rehearsal. I'm sorry, and introduces her to Eve, to Jonathan, and he says to her, you should come to the wedding, and invites her without knowing that she is Sarah's friend. And that has some comical. Again, I'm not going to give away everything. It has some comical results. Basically, throughout the next hour of the movie, he and Kate Beckinsale keep missing each other by like inches, and there's this series of events that keep happening, that keep trying to bring them together, and yet keep pulling them apart. And eventually, this is kind of Eve gets the $5 bill on the airplane that they were taking there that has his number on it, and puts it in her wallet, which is a fake Prada wallet. It says Prado on it, but she bought it for $20 on the street, a knockoff. And Kate Beckinsale has a real Prada wallet that's almost exactly the same. And they accidentally swap wallets at some point when they went to a restaurant, I think. And then, as a wedding present, Hallie gives Jonathan a copy of Love in the Time of Cholera, and it happens to be the copy that has Sarah's name in it and phone number. And now he's getting frantic. He's trying to, figure out if he can track her by this phone number. And Jeremy Piven is helping him out using the resources of the New York Times. And anyway, he at a certain point, he's saying, again, you're being an ass and you should stop this. And, but I'm kind of proud of you. He says, why? He said, because you're not giving up. And, you're trying to go for your dream. Well, meanwhile, Sarah has been trying to find Jonathan, and she finds the dollar bill in the wallet because it's Eve's wallet, not her wallet. So she has the $5 bill in it and finds his name and number and finds that he lives on Charles Street, 23 Charles Street, so that number 23 comes up again, and goes there and asks some people sitting out on the stoop, where's does Jonathan Traeger live here? And he says, yes. Is he here? No, he's at his wedding. He said, wedding? And she says, yeah, he might be married already. She goes to the wedding, and which is at the Waldorf, and is told by a guy who's kind of rearranging chairs, that the wedding was called off. He says, don't worry, you'll get your gift back. And she's like, oh, that's terrible. And she just kind of disappears. And now she figures, well, she lost her chance. She doesn't know where Jonathan is now. He doesn't know where she is either, but he's just, he had mentioned to Dean that it was becoming cold, and what happened to fall. It's obviously starting to become winter, and he's just wandering around sort of aimlessly, and he finds a woman's leather jacket, which Sarah had actually left on a bench earlier in an earlier scene, and he goes to, on their date when I didn't mention this, date that wasn't a date, when they had met, they had gone to Rockefeller Center and gone ice skating, which a lot of people do, especially around Christmas. And he goes back there just on sort of a whim, and is talking about, is just looking out at the ice, and he uses this jacket that he found as a pillow and lies back on the ice, and he's looking up at the stars, and the snow is starting to fall. And this is where the cinematography comes in. This is a really great shot. He's looking at the snow, and suddenly something else is falling towards him, and it slowly comes into focus, and it's a glove. And it floats down through the clouds and drops onto his chest. And he had been holding the other black glove. And he looks out across the ice rink, and there is Sarah standing at the edge of the ice rink. They reintroduce themselves, and they kiss, and obviously they have reconnected. Serendipity, which is a happy accident, has worked in their fate after all. And I thought that was really good. That was a really good ending. And then the last scene you see is they're meeting again as an anniversary, and you don't know if they're married or not, but at least anniversary of dating, at Bloomingdale's, and in the glove counter, and they're going to buy a pair of black gloves from Eugene Levy, who is the clerk. He says, no, we're closed now. And he's being really funny and silly, and a really good ending. And then it ends with a jazz tune. Really good soundtrack also on this. A lot of good jazz and good rock tunes. Very good, very enlightening movie, and Kate Beckinsale looked absolutely, totally gorgeous. And even today at 52, I still think she's absolutely, totally gorgeous. And of course, now she's done quite a few more movies, including the entire Underworld series, which apparently she's going to do a new one, and I'm excited to see that. So again, if you watch this, it's free on Tubi. It's a very good quality transfer, and I highly recommend it. Really good rom-com.